So this video is basically an overview of every single problem on the 2023 AMC 10A, including if they're easier or more difficult than usual. Let's get started. Problem 1 to 5 are classic first 5 problems. They may be a little bit easier than usual. Problem 1, you just have to recognize that Alicia goes 3/2 faster, so it'll be 3/5 faster, so just 3/5 of 45, which is 27. 2 is just this, you just set up a system of equations. 3, you have to recognize that if a positive square is divisible by 5, like in the form x squared, then x has to be divisible by 5. So it's from 5 squared, and so on until 40 squared. So that's a 4. You just have to generalize the triangle inequality to the quadrilateral inequality. So you know that 13 doesn't work, but 12 works, because the sum of 3 other sides greater than the 4th side. 5, you just rearrange to get 2 to the power 15 times 5 to the power 15 times 3 to the power 5. That's just 243 with 15 zeros, so it's E8. So in summary, the first 5 problems were classic first 5s, but maybe slightly easier than usual. 6, you can trivialize this problem by assigning one of the vertices to be 21 and everything else to be 0, and you'll get D. 7, it's going to be B, because the running total will equal 3, so there's some possibilities to do it. You can do 1, 1, 1. You can do 3 zeros. You can just do 3. You can go 1, 2, or you can go 2, 1. If you add them up, you'll get B. 8, classic problem. It's just like a linear, you can just set up a linear equation. So, and you can just use the scaling. There's D. 9, in my opinion, this is a pretty bad problem. It's sort of bashy because it requires casework and knowing how many days are in each month. 10, it's just a system of equations. Another way you can solve it is just by testing every single possible value. In conclusion, 6 to 10, except for problem 9, they're pretty usual problems, just like 1 to 5. They're pretty common problems, but they might be slightly easier than usual. Just a little bit, though. Not as easy as 1 to 5, though. And except for 9, which is just bashy. Okay. Problem 11. This is slightly harder because you have to use like a variable x and then solve using the Pythagorean theorem. So it's a harder than usual problem 11, or about the same. You'll get C. 12. It's pretty easy, except there's some confusion about if you should count 560, because when you reverse the digits, you'll get 065, which might not count. A pretty classic problem, except they should probably clarify that. Problem 13. This is a harder problem because you have to recognize the circle and the 60-degree angle. So that was probably a harder problem. In my opinion, it's kind of misplaced. It should have been like a 16 or so on this test. Slightly harder than usual, problem 13. And you'll get C and I made a video on this problem, so go check it out. Okay, 14, pretty easy problem. It's just 9 over 100 times 1/2, because you have to choose a number that's a multiple of 11, and once you choose that, the probability the chosen divisor is divisible by 11 out of that number is always going to be 1/2, because you can either have 11 or not have 11. Pretty classic problem 14, maybe a little bit easier. 15, this was actually a really easy problem because you can just use difference of squares. So like, for example, when you have 2 circles, it's just going to be 3 pi. And then when you have 3 circles, you're going to add in something different, and so on. So it's basically just like 2 squared minus 1 squared plus 4 squared minus 3 squared, and so on. And that turns out to be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and so on. So you'll get E. So in conclusion, 11 to 15, except for 13, they're about the same level, maybe slightly easier, but 13 was a little harder. Okay, now we're starting to get into the harder end of the test. 16 was pretty easy. You just have to look at the answer choices and eliminate some. So it's kind of misplaced. It's a little bit too easy, or it's about the same, basically. 17 is definitely misplaced. It's way too easy. You just use Pythagorean theorem. 18 is not misplaced. It's not too easy nor too hard. It's in the middle. So you have to use system of equations. You have to use Euler's formula on polyhedra, and you have to recognize that there's going to be 24. There's going to be 14 vertices, and there's going to be 24 edges. 19. This was about the same difficulty as 18. You have to set up a system of equations with S and T, and because the rotation is basically a circle. 20, it's too easy. It's trivial by setting up some casework, and you have to use WLOG without loss of generality. And I made a video on this, so go check it out. Oh, by the way, I also made a video on 17. So in conclusion, 20 to 16, those were about the same difficulty as usual, except for 17, which is really easy. Okay, now we're getting into the final 5. 21, I also made a video on this one. It's actually not really misplaced, because you have to recognize that P as degree 4, and you have to use these things to find some of the roots and find the sum of the coefficients, and then you have to use B's formula. 22 is too easy, but actually a lot, because it's kind of hard to set up the Pythagorean theorem, but once you know how to solve it, it's easy to solve using Pythagorean theorem. 23, it's pretty easy to solve by experimenting. If you try some values, you'll see that it goes down and down and down, and you'll get C15. 24, probably the hardest problem on the test. It's good for its number, and it's solved by finding 30, 60, 90 triangles inside this diagram. So it's a pretty good problem. 25, I don't think MAA recognized that you can just easily trivialize it by recognizing it can't be E, D, C, or B due to the denominator, but for E, you know that it can't be E because it's a strict inequality, because the denominator has to be 220, so the denominator has to be a factor. In conclusion, final 5 problems, except for problem 22, they're about the same difficulty as usual, except for 25 as well. But I don't think MAA recognized that you could solve it so easily. So in conclusion, this whole test is going to be probably slightly easier than a normal test. I expect the AMC cutoffs to be from 102 to like 108, because it's a pretty easy test, also slightly because of the leak. So yeah, if this video helped you, make sure to subscribe and like. Thank you.